The auctioneer's gavel had been falling all morning on the courthouse steps in Larkspur Crossing, knocking down a dead man's plow, his harness, his good wool coat, and his 8-day clock, until there was nothing left of Eldon Mabry's life but a heavy, plain-faced girl in a gray dress. And her own uncle was the one who pointed at her and laughed. "Now this here," Cyrus Mabry called out to the crowd, hooking a thumb toward his niece like she was the last unsold lot in the wagon. "This is what's left. 23 years old, eats like 2 men, and not a soul in 3 counties fool enough to court her. I'll throw her in free with the debt. Whoever covers Eldon's note at the bank can have the cooking and the keep, and good luck to him." The crowd in the cold spring mud laughed the way crowds do, easy and mean, and Cora Mabry stood very still with her hands folded over her apron and counted the laughs the way she counted everything, because numbers were the only thing in the world that had never once lied to her. $87.40. That was the figure on her father's note. That was, to the dollar and the dime, exactly what she was worth to the town of Larkspur Crossing, Wyoming Territory, in the spring of 1888, and not 1 cent more. If something in Cora's story takes hold of you tonight, stay with it all the way to the end and tell me in the comments which town you're listening from, because I'd like to know how far a forgotten girl's name can travel before the night's through. She had expected nothing, which is its own kind of armor, and so she was not surprised when no one stepped forward, and she was not surprised when her uncle's grin curdled, and she was not surprised when a tall man in a dusty canvas coat came up the courthouse steps without hurry, took off his hat, and laid $87.40 on the clerk's table in coin and folded paper. He did not look at the crowd. He looked at the clerk, and he signed his name where the note was discharged, Asa Rourke, and only when the ink was dry did he turn and look at Cora, and the thing she noticed was that he did not look at her the way the crowd had. He looked at her the way a man looks at someone he has just decided to be responsible for, which is a heavier and a stranger thing than pity. "I run a freight and cattle outfit out on Antelope Bench," he said, quiet enough that the front row had to stop laughing to hear it. "It's 12 miles out. There's honest work and a fair wage and a roof. You don't have to take it, but you don't have to stay here either." And Cora Mabry, who had been priced and laughed at and thrown in free, looked at the empty steps where her father's clock had stood an hour before and said, "I'll take the work." The road out to the bench took them past the last lamps of town and into the long blue dark of the high country, and for the first hour neither of them said a word. Cora sat with her hands in her lap and waited for the catch, because there was always a catch, and she had learned young that the kindest seeming bargains were the ones that cost you the most in the end. But the catch did not come. What came instead was a low porch light burning at the top of a rise, and a small square house with smoke at the chimney, and a sharp old voice calling out of the dark before the wagon had even stopped. "Asa Rourke, you went to town for nails and a salt block, and you come back with a woman? I'm blind, not deaf. I can hear 2 on that seat." The old voice belonged to Della Rourke, Asa's grandmother, 76 years old and half blind with the milk in her eyes, who had crossed the plains in a wagon at 20 and helped her husband carve the bench out of nothing and buried him under the one cottonwood that would grow there. She came onto the porch with a lamp she did not need and turned her clouded eyes on Cora and sniffed. "Well, don't just stand in the yard. You'll let the heat out." It was not a welcome, but it was not a closed door either, and Cora had learned to tell the difference. There was a room at the back of the house with a narrow bed and a window that faced east, and Asa stood in the doorway with his hat in his hand and told her it was hers. The door latched from the inside, and no one would trouble her, and then he said goodnight and went away down the hall, and Cora sat on the edge of the bed in the dark for a long time, waiting again for the catch, and again it did not come. She had spent 23 years being told what she was: too big, too plain, too much, a burden, a mouth, a shame. And she had no practice at all for being given a door that latched and a window that faced the morning. She did not sleep so much as she stopped bracing, somewhere near dawn, and the difference between those 2 things was new to her. What Cora Mabry knew how to do was work, and what she knew best of all was numbers. She had kept her father's accounts since she was 11, because her father drank and her uncle cheated, and somebody in that house had to know to the penny what was owed and what was owing. So, on her second morning on the bench, When she found Asa Rourke at the kitchen table, scowling at a freight ledger with the patient misery of a man who can do hard things with his hands and no easy thing with a column of figures, she did not ask permission. She set down the coffee, looked over his shoulder at the page, and said, "Your tally's wrong. You've charged the Halloran freight twice and forgot the Decker load altogether. You're out $4 in your own favor and 11 against you." Asa looked up at her slow. "You can read that? I can read it, add it, and tell you it's been kept by a man who'd rather be shoeing a horse," Cora said. And old Della Rourke, listening from her chair by the stove, let out a short, surprised bark of a laugh, the first sound of pleasure Cora had heard in that house, and said, "Asa, give the girl the book." So Cora took the book. By the end of the week, she had 3 years of Rourke freight accounts square to the penny. The eggs, sorted by which hen laid steady, and a system for the cattle tallies that Pike, the young hand, called witchcraft, and Solomon Reed, the older one, called a blessing. She fixed the books, and then she fixed the things nobody had asked her to fix. She patched the smoke hole in Della's good shawl before the old woman noticed it was gone, and baked bread that brought all 3 men in from the corral with their hats off, and she did it all with her head down and her hands moving. The way a person works, who still does not quite believe the work will be allowed to continue. The thaw, when it came over Della first. The old woman could not see to thread a needle anymore, or read the small print on a seed catalog, and it galled her past bearing, until the evening she discovered that Cora would read the catalog aloud to her without making her ask, would describe the colors of the cloth in the dry goods circular, would sit with her and do sums about the garden and the laying hens, and never once let on that she was doing the old woman a kindness. "You don't pity me," Della said one night, suspicious, turning her clouded eyes toward the girl. "No, ma'am," Cora said. "Pity's for people who've quit. You haven't quit. You're just blind." And Della Rourke, who had been waiting half a year for somebody to say a true thing instead of a soft one, reached out and found Cora's hand and held it, and that was the beginning of it. As for Asa, the change in him was slower and quieter, a thing built of small noticings that he started bringing the worst of the tangled paperwork to her, not because he couldn't manage, but because he liked to watch her manage it, that he learned how she took her coffee, that he stood a little straighter in town when the talk turned to his outfit, because for the first time in years, the outfit was being run right. But the town did talk. Word had gone 12 miles up to the bench and back down again that Asa Rourke had paid good money to drag the unsold Mabry girl off the courthouse steps, and Larkspur Crossing made of it exactly what small towns make of such things. There were jokes at the feed store and pity at the church social, and there was Linus Drummond, who owned the bank and half the mortgages in the county, and most of the men who held the other half, watching the whole business with the still patience of a man who has learned to profit from other people's misfortune. Drummond wanted the bench. He had wanted it for 2 years, ever since the surveyors had come whispering through the valley with talk of a railroad spur that would follow Quill Creek down out of the high country, and whoever held the water and the right-of-way along that creek would be rich enough to buy the whole rest of the valley twice over. The trouble was that Asa Rourke held the bench free and clear, all but the small operating note he carried at Drummond's own bank, and a small note is a thing a careful banker can work with, if he is patient, and Linus Drummond was the most patient man in Wyoming Territory. The note came due in August, and when Asa rode in to pay it, the figure had grown. Drummond sat behind his desk, with his ledger open, and his voice smooth as poured cream, and explained that Asa was mistaken about the balance, that there had been advances, that the interest compounded as the contract specified, that the sum now stood at $1,100, and not the $400 Asa had carried in his head, and that, regrettably, since Asa could not pay $1,100 on a day's notice, the bank would be obliged to foreclose on the bench by autumn. Asa Rourke was not a man given to noise, but he came home that night gray in the face, and at the supper table he laid it out plain because he did not know how to do otherwise. The note had somehow tripled. The bank had the law on its side, and by the first hard frost the Rourkes might be off the land that Della's husband had died to hold. The kitchen went quiet. Pike swore softly. Solomon set down his fork. Della's blind eyes filled, but did not spill. And Cora Mabry, who had heard the whole thing without a word, said the only thing she could think to say, which was, "Bring me the papers." He brought her the papers, the note, the bank's ledger sheet copied out. The receipts Asa had kept folded in a tin, and Cora sat up the whole of that night at the kitchen table with a single candle and the steel trap memory she had built in a house full of cheats, and she went through every figure twice. By the time the candle guttered, she knew 3 things, and she knew them the way she knew her own name. The note had been backdated a full year, so that a year of interest had been charged on money Asa never had. There were 2 advances entered in the ledger, $60 and $90, that Asa had never taken and could not have taken, because on both of those dates, the receipts in his tin put him 100 miles off, freighting in the Wind River country, and the interest had been compounded monthly when the note in Asa's own hand said plainly, in ink that had faded but not lied, that it would compound but once a year. It was not a debt. It was a trap, built figure by figure by a man who had counted on no one in the Rourke house being able to read it. Cora Mabry had been counting on exactly that her whole life, and it had made her very, very good at numbers. She thought, for one bad hour before dawn, that knowing this would save them. And then she thought longer, the way she always did. And she understood that it would not by itself, not the way the world was built. She was a woman, and a poor one, and a plain, heavy girl the whole town had laughed at. And Linus Drummond was the bank, and there was not a man in Larkspur Crossing who would take her word over his. The arithmetic of it was simple, and it was cruel, and it had her name written all the way through it. The town hated the bargain Asa had made over her. Drummond was squeezing him for the railroad, yes, but Drummond was also enjoying it, was pressing harder than even greed required, because Asa Rourke had embarrassed the whole proper order of things by taking in the unsellable girl and treating her like she was worth a clean roof, and now the town would get to watch them both go down together. Cora Mabry sat in the cold kitchen and did the worst sum of her life, and it came out the same way every time. As long as she stayed, she was the rope around Asa Rourke's neck. So she packed. She did it quietly the next morning, the way she did everything, the small carpet bag she'd come with, and not one thing more, and she meant to be on the freight wagon to the railhead before anyone could talk her out of it. She had her hand on the door when Asa Rourke came in from the barn and saw the bag, and the look that went across his face was not the look of a man losing a bookkeeper. "I worked out your wages," Cora said, fast, before her nerve could go. "There's a list on the table, square to the penny, what you owe me, and what I'd reckon I owe you for the keep, and it comes out near even. I'll go on the morning freight. You'll have an easier time of it without me to throw on the fire. The whole town wants to watch you ruined over the fat girl off the courthouse steps, and I won't be the thing that ruins you. It's the one kindness I've got left to give a man who gave me a door that latched, so let me give it." And she was shaking by the end of it, the steadiness all gone, 23 years of bracing gone, and she reached for the latch. "Don't go where I can't come after you," Asa Rourke said, and his voice was not steady either. "You ran before you let me finish a single thing I've been trying to say to you all summer. So you stand there one more minute and let me say it." Cora's hand stopped on the door. "I didn't pay that note on the courthouse steps for the cooking," Asa said. "I'd watched you in town twice before that day. I watched you do your uncle's books in your head outside the feed store while he cheated a widow in front of you. And I watched you not say a word because saying a word cost more than you had, and I thought, there's a person who sees everything and gets to keep none of it. I didn't buy you, Cora. I covered a dead man's debt so a living woman could get up off those steps. There's a difference, and you've been too afraid your whole life to see it. The town can laugh till it chokes. I'm not losing the bench because of you. If I lose it, it'll be because a thief got there first, and the only person on this whole place who can prove he's a thief is the one standing at my door with her bag packed." He took off his hat, the way he had on the courthouse steps. "Stay. Not for me. For the truth you're carrying. Then go anywhere you want, and I'll take you there myself. But stay long enough to win." Cora set down the bag. The foreclosure on the Rourke place could not, by territorial law, be done in a banker's back office. It had to be heard before the county board, and that hearing was set for the second week of September, in the meeting hall in Larkspur Crossing. And the whole valley came out for it the way they'd have come out for a hanging. Linus Drummond came with 2 lawyers and his calfskin ledger and the comfortable certainty of a man who has never once lost. He laid out the debt, $1,100, the advances, the compounded interest in his cream-smooth voice, and the board nodded. And it was very nearly over before it began, until the chairman, going through the motions, asked if anyone present wished to speak on behalf of the Rourke claim. And Cora Mabry stood up. There was a stir in the hall, a low, ugly ripple of it, and somebody near the back laughed, the same easy, mean laugh she'd heard on the courthouse steps in the spring. The chairman hesitated and looked at the lawyers and was about to say that the matter was between the bank and Mr. Rourke, and old Della Rourke's voice cracked out across the room from the front bench, blind and furious and proud. "This is Wyoming, you fools. Our women have voted since '69 and sat on juries longer than half you've held your jobs. The girl has standing in this territory whether it scalds you or not. Let her speak." And because it was true, and because it was Wyoming, and because no man in that room wanted to be the one who told Della Rourke she was wrong about the territory her husband had died building, the chairman cleared his throat and said the witness could proceed. Cora Mabry walked to the front of the hall, with her head up for the first time in her life. She did not have her uncle's gift for performance, and she did not try for it. She had something better. She had every figure in Linus Drummond's ledger committed to memory, and she had Asa Rourke's tin of receipts in her 2 hands, and she took the room through it the way she had taken Asa through the freight book on her second morning on the bench, slowly, plainly, so a child could follow it. The note, she showed, was dated the 4th of June, but the bank's own stamp on the back said it was received and filed the following May. "A note cannot be received a year before it is signed," she said, "unless someone has reached back in time to add a year of interest, and time does not run backward, gentlemen, only ledgers do." The 2 advances, she showed, were entered on the 9th of August and the 2nd of October, and here is Mr. Rourke's freight receipt from the Wind River Agency, stamped and witnessed, putting him 110 miles from this bank on both dates. So unless Mr. Drummond means to tell us a man can collect a cash advance in 2 places at once, those advances were never made. "And the interest," she said, and she held up the original note in Asa's faded hand. "The interest was written here to compound once a year, and it has been charged in this ledger 12 times a year. And the difference between those 2 words, once and 12, is the difference between $400 and $1,100. And the difference between $1,100 and $400 is exactly the size of the railroad money that Mr. Drummond would like very much for none of you to start asking about." The hall had gone silent. She turned and faced Linus Drummond directly, and her voice did not shake. "You built a debt the way some men build a house, Mr. Drummond, figure on figure. And you built it because you were certain no one on the bench could read your hand. You were almost right. You were off by 1 fat girl from the courthouse steps." Linus Drummond's lawyers asked for the ledger to be impounded and examined, which is what guilty men's lawyers ask for when the floor has opened beneath them, and the county board impounded it. And within the month, the examination showed everything Cora had said, and more. 3 other notes in the valley worked the same way. 3 other families Drummond had meant to squeeze for the right-of-way along Quill Creek. The Rourke note was struck down to its true figure of $400, which Asa paid in full out of the freight money. Cora's straightened books had been quietly earning all summer, and the bench was free and clear again, and Linus Drummond left Larkspur Crossing on the same railroad he had tried to steal a valley for, ahead of charges, and was not missed. And the railroad, when it came 2 years later, ran down Quill Creek exactly as the Whispers had promised. And the water and the right-of-way belonged to the people who had held the land honestly, and the Rourke outfit, with its books kept to the penny by the best hand in the territory, did better than it had ever done. But all that came later. On the evening of the hearing, Asa Rourke drove Cora Mabry back up to the bench in the long gold light, and at the top of the rise, with the porch lamp burning ahead of them, and Della already on the steps demanding to be told everything, he stopped the wagon and did not start it again. "I told you in the spring you didn't have to stay," he said. "That still holds. You've got a name in this valley now. You could keep books for every outfit between here and the railhead and never want for work or for a roof, and you'd have earned every bit of it yourself, and no man could ever say again that you came free with a debt. I want you to hear that I know it. You're not anybody's bargain." He turned on the wagon seat and faced her square. And I want you to hear that I'm asking you to marry me, not so you'll stay, not to settle anything, not because there's a debt between us, because there isn't. It's square to the penny. You wrote the list yourself. I'm asking because I've got no good reason left not to, and 100 to. You can say no, and you'll still have the room with the door that latches for as long as you want it, and I'll drive you to the railhead myself in the morning if that's your answer. But I'd rather you said yes. I'd rather it more than I've wanted anything in my life. Cora Mabry looked at him in the gold light, and then she looked past him at the small square house and the old blind woman on the porch, and the one cottonwood standing dark against the sky over the grave of a man who had built all of it out of nothing, and she did the last sum. It came out different from every sum she had ever done, because for the first time the figure was not what she was worth to somebody else, but what she wanted for herself. And she had never in 23 years been allowed to want a single thing out loud. Yes, she said. And then, because she had spent a lifetime having her worth decided by other people, and she meant to do this one thing entirely on her own, she said it again, slower, so there could be no mistake about whose choice it was. Yes, Asa. Not because I was bought, and not because I've nowhere else to go, because I've got everywhere else to go now, and I know it. I'm saying yes, because out of the whole wide territory that finally opened up in front of me tonight, this hill is the only place I ever want to stand. I choose it. I choose that cranky old woman on the porch, and these books that'd go to ruin without me, and you. I'm not staying because I have to. I'm staying because I want to, and you, Asa Rourke, are the first thing in my whole life I have ever once gotten to want, where the whole world could hear me say it. They were married under the cottonwood in October, with Della Rourke crowing and weeping at the front, and the whole of the valley that had laughed at her in the spring come up the bench in their wagons to watch, a little ashamed of themselves and a little better for it. And it is true, the way these things are sometimes true, that they did well after the railroad money, the straightened books, the second cottonwood Asa planted the spring. Their first child was born, a daughter they named after Della, who lived long enough blind and happy to hold the baby and declare her, by feel, the homeliest pretty child in Wyoming and the richest woman in it besides, because she'd be raised by a mother who knew exactly what she was worth. Cora Rourke kept the books for half the valley by the time she was 30, and the same men who had priced her at $87.40 on the courthouse steps came hat in hand to ask her to find the holes in their accounts. And she found them, and she charged a fair wage, and she never once let any of them forget where the gavel had fallen. The girl they had thrown in free with a dead man's debt became the woman the whole county trusted with its money and its truth, and she ran her own land and her own mind and her own heart for the rest of her long life, and she was chosen, every single day of it, by the people she had chosen back. And she was never, not for 1 hour of the rest of it, alone. Cora never could change the size of her body or erase the laughter on those courthouse steps, but she could count and she could choose, and that turned out to be enough. Whatever the world has decided you're worth, the figure is wrong. Your real value is the steady, quiet thing you do well. And the day you finally say out loud what you want, the world rearranges itself to make room. Please note, this story was created and fictionalized by AI to bring you a little entertainment, while passing along a warm and positive lesson about knowing your own worth.